Basically, this 10-gallon Aquascape looks pretty good. Bacopa tends to grow quite well. Just the other day I snipped the Bacopa on the right in half and replanted the tops, so it should grow nice and thick on the right. The Bacopa on the left does tend to lose the leaves on the bottom of the stalks, as does the red Rotala, which is called Rotala Hra, H''RA. I recently removed a bunch of Java moss from this tank and sold it, or rather traded it, to my local pet store. Sometimes they'll do a straight trade, other times they say, well, you got to pay taxes. I continue to use planting tongs and a butter knife to scrape blackbeard algae off of the driftwood. I'm seriously considering taking all of the driftwood out of my smaller tanks and putting it in my 120-gallon tank, which is a cold tank for cherry shrimp and also a home for white cloud mountain minnow, and scaping my tanks with slate. I decided to experiment with that in my 10-gallon leopard Danio tank, and I really like the results. Algae does grow on the slate, but it's easy to scrape off with a toothbrush. Well, that's impossible in driftwood, particularly blackbeard algae. It doesn't have roots per se, but it does anchor in deep into the wood and basically have to remove the top layer of wood to get rid of it. And when you do that, even with a water change, there's lots of free-floating algae and spores to grab a hold somewhere else. So what I'd like to do is remove tall, spindly Bacopa and replant the tops. I believe I'll do the same with the Rotala Hra. The Hra on the right side looks pretty good. One of those plants anyway. But now, 3 on the left, just a couple leaves at the very top of the plant. So I'll give them one more chance, remove the stalks and see how it goes. I am quite pleased that dwarf Sagittaria seems to be taking off, as is the pennywort. So, not really a carpet, but nice stand of low-growing plants on the right and on the left. I like to keep the center clear of plants. I call that the staging area, where I feed the shrimp. Then if there's any leftovers, I want to remove that after a day or so, and hopefully keep the nutrients in the water column down. I think that looks much better. Don't have spindly Rotala Hra and Bacopa anymore. As they grow, sometimes they do alright. Here's a shot of the left side of the tank. You can see on the right that the dwarf Japanese pennywort is doing very good as a foreground plant. I've had dwarf Sagittaria for several years, but I believe it's doing better in this tank than it had previously in any other tank. Finally, here's a shot of the right side of the tank. On this side, the Rotala Hra, the red plant on the far left, is doing best, as is Bacopa As you can see, I snipped the top off of 3 of the plants and replanted those tops. In the past, that's worked out fine. The tops will begin to put out new growth shortly. I do have a few Anubias in the tank. I continue to snip off leaves that are highly infested with algae. I moved one plant to my best shrimp colony, a 10-gallon tank, where the shrimp do very well, but the back of the tank has a backdrop on it that's just a photograph. I've added black diamond blasting grit to cover up the gravel in that tank, but the shrimp do tend to keep the algae off the plants, and Anubias does very well there, so I might just go ahead and move the last couple of Anubias from this tank to that tank where hundreds of shrimp can rid them of algae.